So my wife died right in front of me, which is pretty weird when you're in your 30s. She dropped dead of a cardiac arrest, and I revived her. And when she came back, she was different. And I was really pissed off at God. I raged. And one day I was sitting on a log in a park, and I felt like God just spoke to me, and he said, son, I just want you to know that if I want to take Laurel home, I'm not going to ask your permission. I love her way more than you do. And you can be mad and you can hold your breath and turn blue and die if you want to, but you cannot manipulate me. I love her way more than you do. And by the way, son, I love you too. And that was the beginning of a turn for me in learning how to trust God when I didn't have control over my circumstances.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Dad.
Hey, honey.
What's up?
Woo! A lot.
Yeah,
It's
a lot
very
is
busy.
up. Yeah, so what? We had 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks out of the studio, so it's weird coming back. I've oddly missed it in here. But yeah, episode 20. This is a milestone.
Yeah, it is.
Like
It's
this.
significant. We've talked to Yaz, who is somebody that has been our really our coach and our consultant on doing this, and some others like Billy Anderson and other friends of ours, Rachel Burnham, who always gives us good counsel and prayer, and Lori and Laurel, as some of you know her, my wife, your mom, all good. In fact, even I keep thinking of people. Jordan, your brother, he's given us good advice about ways to make things better. Big learning process, but it really is just our schedules have been so busy.
Yeah. I think for us, it seems like we're still kind of in a lull, but I think it's this, again, reorientation of, why are we doing this? What are we doing it for? What do we hope to be getting out of it? What do we hope others are getting out of it? All those things. So we're really, I think, individually and collectively just talking through this and working through it. And that can be challenging for sure.
Yeah, it's not even this. This is just one part of what we're doing. Is you've got your wood burning business and other things you're doing with other people. Lori and I are in this preparatory stage for a thing called the Order of the Mustard Seed, which is a year-long preparation. If anybody wants to know about that, they can ask me. But it's a spiritual formation, spiritual way of life for us. So we're doing that. I've also been contemplating getting some training in spiritual direction, which is above and beyond all my coaching, training, and certifications. So it's just a lot going on.
We've had conversations, and we've been having conversations of this too, of you and I honing in on our coaching businesses and joining forces. You know? I mean, part of this podcast, I think, does align with it, with us doing that. But this would actually be taking it to the next level of really laying a foundation and a framework for our coaching business together and what that would look like. So
it's a lot of just reflection and thought, and spending time being quiet and settling and just thinking about things with a clarity and not just from an emotional perspective, so.
Yeah, so thanks to y'all for joining and tuning in. And as always, we're just super thankful that you're here and that you're taking time out of your day and your life to listen to Dad and I ramble about life. It does mean a lot, and we hope that it's meaningful for you. We hope that through these kind of conversations that you just can get something out of it, even if it's just one thing that makes you go a little bit deeper or think a little bit longer, contemplate something. That's really what we're after.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, our goal, and like a friend of mine, Jerry Riddick, said it too, is don't worry as much about the content. There's so much content out there in the ethos. But what we're trying to do is, one, provoke thought, practicing not caring or being indifferent about whether you agree with us or not. That isn't our goal. And when I say indifferent, it's not that we don't care. It's that we aren't going to focus in on whether you agree with us or not. What we're trying to do is provoke thought in people, get you to think. We're not trying to necessarily teach you anything except how to have conversations, intergenerational type of conversations. That's the goal.
Well, and also too, this isn't therapy.
Right.
You and I both have a wide range of experience, and wearing different hats. And this is not therapy. I think I am a full-on believer of therapy and professional help. And again, we're not therapists.
Yeah.
We're just here talking about our own experience. So that all leads us to our discussion about mom. And, I think it's pretty apropos with episode 20 as a mile marker episode that we would really come back on it.
It's episode 20, which it's been 30 years ago, so it doesn't mean anything exactly. No, I'm just kidding. There's no correlation whatsoever. I'm just kidding.
Whatever, Dad.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Thanks
for ruining my flow.
Yeah. So as episode 20 was dawning, you had the idea of wanting to bring it back and focus in on mom and the video that went viral for you. How long ago was that now?
It's been about over 2 years.
Over 2 years ago. So over 2 years ago, as y'all saw in the beginning of this video, we played that clip, I'm gonna say.
Well, what I noticed about it is Tommy Beal, who's another friend of ours who has a lot of influence on us. He said, hey, let's do this video, which you guys know the story. So we spent literally 10 minutes creating this 49-second video, and we titled it, My Wife Died Right in Front of My Eyes. Well, in typical, platform occurrences, it's the headline that grabbed people. So what we did is did that, and it resonated on some level. I've noticed, which I don't look at it a lot, but I've noticed like on TikTok, people are starting to watch that again. So I don't know if that's the algorithms or what. But when you talk about those kinds of things, and it's not just us, having those catchy titles makes a difference. That we didn't even have that in mind. We didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
But the point is, after we put that out there, that resonated with people on a lot of levels. On one end of the spectrum, people were going, wow, that's amazing, to, you're mentally ill, right? And all that was going on in between.
Well, why do you think something like that, why do you think that resonates with people online when you watch video of strangers?
Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's like there's an emotional, something hits on a deep, deep human level when you think of someone watching their...
It's kind of morbid, right? There's this morbid curiosity, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, the thought of, or just the emotional turmoil of like watching your wife, like the mother of your children, like literally die right in front of you.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. And even if you haven't experienced that, there's this level of like human empathy.
Well, and that was the cynical side of it. Is what I noticed too from a lot of people that watch. It's up to 3.6 million views now. A lot of compassion from people who don't even know me.
Right.
Just people supportive, sympathetic, empathetic, compassionate, to the point it's very moving to feel that kind of support. We thought we'd get 1,000 views on it, and it was really to kind of promote the fact that I was a coach. Weirdly we connected that, and it started out on my coaching TikTok channel, and it quickly moved to something beyond that. I mean, the first night we looked the next morning, it was like 84,000 views.
Right.
But again, it was we told a very high level part of the story. We didn't talk about what I meant by some of the things I said on that, and there was a whole lot more to that story for you guys and me.
Yeah. So from that though, we have had a lot of people reach out and say, "Hey, what actually happened? Can you tell a little bit more detail than just like my wife died in front of me?"
Yeah.
So this is that episode.
Well, we had a guy I had two guys, my friends Mark and John, over for coffee this morning. It was a very nice Ethiopian bean.
You are so on this Ethiopian kid.
Yeah, anyway.
Over at this coffee. Is it better than your other stuff? Is
It's
that your
different.
Your Colombian?
You feel like a snob when you talk about it because it's like, there are earthy tones with slight hints of chocolate. What? It's coffee. It came from Africa and it's African dirt. Anyway, and John said, he goes, I should have picked this up on the podcast because he goes, I started listening to the podcast from the end going backwards and then I changed to going to the first one and coming forward. And he goes, I thought your wife, Lori, the one that I met, I thought that the one you were talking about had died and Lori was your second wife.
Oh, yeah.
And that it was Hillary's stepmom.
Oh, wow.
And so there was a little bit of confusion about that.
Well, that makes sense. That would make sense.
He thought I was a widow.
So mom did die. Her heart was stopped for what, over 40 minutes? So
yeah,
clinically she died.
We got, I mean, I don't know how, do you want me to tell some of that or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, but real quick, she died and wasn't supposed to, she wasn't supposed to come back, but she did. And then she had a 2% chance of making it through the night. And she's still here, after 30 years. And we'll get into that. But how about, let's just, I'm going to ask the questions because let's also preface it. So your mom are health freaks at this point, living in Mississippi. Y'all are big cyclists. Y'all are hippie little, granola kids, Jesus freaks, all
from
of that
the 70s,
stuff.
all that.
Y'all are eating like, aren't y'all eating like, out of it's like the biblical diet, like super healthy.
That. Yeah.
And then y'all had kids and couldn't afford to do that, so then we started eating processed, nasty, disgusting food.
Well, we fed that to you. We ate the good stuff. No, I'm just kidding.
No, so let's paint that picture though. So we're living in Mississippi. There's 4 of us kids in the house.
Under the age of 10.
Mm-hmm. Mom so I'm 4 when this happens. Haley, my oldest sister, is 7.
Jordan's 1.
Jordan is 1, and y'all had already lost Bailey a year and a half ago?
Before that, yeah.
So I have a sister, Bailey, who died in 89. So 2 years after I was born. So
right.
Yeah, so y'all are, that's kind of the picture. And so this kind of did come out of left field because you would never expect someone as healthy as mom to...
And your age. We're about the age you are now.
Well, y'all are younger than me. That's what's crazy.
Younger, yeah.
I'm 36. Y'all were, mom was 32?
So I was 35.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so just share what happened. So from your perspective, y'all had just put us down to bed.
Yeah, it was we had cycled, the day before we had cycled 52 miles around the reservoir where we live. And Laurel, as some of you know her, got separated from the pack. There was a group of us, and she got lost.
You go back and forth by saying Lori. You say Lori and Laurel. Can you explain that real quick?
Yeah, Lori is what her name is. She was born Lori Lynn Lansing. Her mother was crazy and named all the children with all L's. So it's Linda Louise Lansing, Lori Lynn Lansing, Lon, whatever his middle name is, Lisa.
Yeah.
Louise. Anyway, so her name was Lori. After the cardiac arrest, and she came back and was a different person, she named herself Laurel.
Mm-hmm. So she changed it. So you often call her still...
I call her Lori, which she's good with.
Yeah. Most people who meet her now, she goes by Laurel.
Yes.
So just to clear that up. Okay.
Right.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So anyway, we had ridden around the reservoir, and she'd gotten separated, didn't have any water with her. And so she was very dehydrated. And we went home and
Not a big deal,
No.
right? Just
and I think that night we celebrated my brother's birthday. It was October 18th is when we had ridden, I think.
is this all really? I'm gonna interject with questions, so that's.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to cut you off, but is this all really still clear in your memory?
Oh
You know,
yeah,
it happened so
that
long
part.
ago.
There are blank spots because of the trauma of it, but this was clear. And so we did the birthday thing, went home. The next day we had worked, I guess. I don't remember exactly, but I remember we put you kids to bed and we sat down to watch a movie. And
Do you remember what movie?
Scream 3. No, I'm just kidding. The Exorcist. No, I don't remember what it was. Something laid back. I forget what it was, but as we were sitting there waiting, as the credits were rolling up and all that, Mom said, Lori said, I feel dizzy. And you go, okay. When you're that age and you don't eat, you don't eat a meal or something, and you just whatever. We weren't even thinking about the day before where she got her electrolytes all jacked up from being dehydrated. Mm-hmm. I said, well, go to the doctor then and get it checked out. And that was it. And so the movie starts rolling up, and then I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear her go. I just hear this gasp, kind of a like that. And I look back, and Mom is laying she's got her head back on the couch, and her arms are like this, are posturing. They're like she's having a seizure. And
she'd never had a seizure before?
No. And so I looked at her, I went over and grabbed her face in my hands, and her eyes were rolled back in her head. And I went, ooh, this is not good. So I ran to the phone, which was in the other room, to call 911. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't yet. And as I got halfway from the couch to the phone, something in my head, in my thinking, I didn't hear a voice, said, no, take her. We live 4 miles from the hospital. I stopped mid-stride, turned around, went back to the couch and picked her up. So this has all happened in
seconds,
a minute or time. I picked her up and she wet all over herself. And I don't know a lot about medical stuff, but when I saw that, I went, this is bad. This is really bad. And that's when the fear kicked in. I took her to the van and literally threw her in the back seat and ran next door to our neighbor, Dickie May is his name. And I'm banging on the door going, Dickie. And he's in there. I can hear him, and he's going, what? I said, I think Lori's dying. And he ran out in the front yard putting his pants on. He was in his underwear, and he was putting his pants on. And it was just like bang, bang, like that. It's just training from my military. I don't know what it was, but everything was just kicking in. His wife, Pam, she was sick as a dog with the flu, but she went over to watch you kids, and we headed for the hospital. So that all happened within 3 or 4 minutes. Got to the main drag of our town. We live in a small town in Mississippi. Dickie told me about 5 years later, he goes, when we got to that main road, she was flatlined. She had no pulse. He was a volunteer fireman. And the year before, I think he had gotten an award from the President of the United States for saving somebody's life who was having a heart attack on the highway.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I didn't know all that then. So we're on our way to the hospital. It's 4 miles away, and about a quarter of a mile down the road, he screams, stop, like that. And so I literally skidded into a driveway, and it happened to be Dick's son and daughter-in-law's house right next to the high school. Mm-hmm. And we drug her out on the ground, and he screamed at his son. Well, his son and his daughter-in-law were at the back of their car in the driveway with the trunk open, looking at us as we skidded in there. I drug her out on the ground. She was blue.
And he said something to him. Well, they had just come from, he was a nurse, an RN, and she was an EMT. So they had all the rescue gear in the trunk of their car.
Dang.
All of it. Well,
The timing of that is insane.
I know. And they're looking at us. So I started doing compressions, just doing them. I was hitting her so hard, I was touching her breastbone or felt like I was touching her spine.
She says she's still sore from that
Yeah.
to this day, I think.
I was doing that, and you can make fun of this all you want. You can poo-poo it. You can think it's BS. But when that was going on, I was terrorized by what was going on with my wife. I was praying and doing those compressions, and I was
Were you like praying into her ear? Like,
Well, I'd read somewhere that when you're dying, the last thing that goes is your hearing. That's what I've heard.
right.
I was going, I speak life into you, in Jesus' name, in her ear. Because I'm going, she may not be able to see or know what's going on, but I'm going to speak into her ear. Mm-hmm. And I believe we're triune beings. So not only do you hear with your physical ears, that does something in your brain and it does something in your spirit. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about this all later. In the moment, I'm just freaking out,
Yeah.
Well, they call 911 because they do have cell phones. We didn't have them. And when James, Dick's son, called 911, both the ambulances in our town were out on calls.
They had cell phones in 90.
Well, they're just coming in, just getting there. So he calls 911 and both the ambulances are gone. So if I would have waited and called 911 back at the house when I ran to the phone and ignored that and called, I'd still been waiting there. Both ambulances were out on calls. And they don't have they did at that point in time they didn't have defibrillators on the ambulances.
Did Dickie's son have? Did they have?
He didn't have one, but they called they called the volunteer fire department, and it was literally from where we were standing, you could see the building, which is about yards away. So all those guys came over.
Okay.
I'm doing compressions. The fireman's looking at me like I'm insane, which I get because I'm compressing and then praying in her ear. And Dick's daughter-in-law said, "Leave him alone. Leave him alone." So,
like, leave you alone?
Yeah, because the firemen were going, "What's this guy doing?" It's not protocol to stop and pray in their ear. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so much has changed technology-wise too. Now you can buy a defibrillator for $1,000 on Amazon, mm-hmm. But back then they didn't have them. So. Yeah. I heard him talking. One of the guys talking to the doctor, the rescue. He goes, "I don't care how you get her here, get her here." So they took a backboard for when people have back injuries, and they slid her on that, and threw in the back of a pickup and drove the rest of the way.
Wow. Were you with her in the pickup?
No, I drove the van.
Okay.
And we got there, and I was beside myself, and literally I was freaking out.
Dickie was still with you, or what?
Somewhere. I don't even remember where he was, but I remember them dragging her in there, and they wouldn't let me back there. This is at the small hospital, and I could hear later on. They told us that it took 30 minutes to get her heart beating again and get a regular heartbeat, and they had the defibrillator. The first couple of times they were just hitting her with it. The last 3 times they had it on the highest setting it would go on. Yeah. And I often think of what if they only did it 4 times instead of 5 times.
Wasn't that like past protocol too? Like
I don't even know.
Do it that many times, but they did it an extra time or something.
They hit her and it came back into rhythm. I was leaning against the wall. I just remember I could hear this doctor in there going, "This is not a heart attack." He goes, "I don't know what it is. I don't know what, I've never seen this before." Well, Mom was a runner, an athlete, a swimmer in college or in high school, and ran a runner and all
super
that.
Active.
And every time in the past they'd ask her about her heart rate and her blood pressure, they'd go, "Are you an athlete?" And she'd go, "Yeah, I run." So she had this irregular heartbeat that they never picked up on.
Except for one time, I think Mom said after giving birth to Haley, the doctor said
something about
just mentioned something. He never
Right.
he never thought anything of it. He just was like, "Oh, that was weird." Weird heart heart rate or whatever.
Yeah. So anyway, so that night they gave her. I think I called everybody. My parents lived in Nashville. Lori's lived in Jacksonville, Florida. But they gave her a 2% chance of surviving the night. And I remember Dick May's daughter, Lisa. Her name was Lisa, I think. Melissa or Lisa. They were all laughing in the waiting room, and it really made me angry. And she told me later on the reason we were doing that because this girl was our age, and she was dying right in front of us, and that was just the way we were dealing with it, was by trying to have humor. But they sent her to ICU.
Well, because most of the time when you're in the medical field, if you're dealing with like what you think might be heart attack or whatever, they're usually like people are older, not your own
She was in good
age.
shape too. Mom's always been in good shape. And so they gave her a 2% chance of surviving. I don't remember how, but I somehow got to the house, and I took a shower, and I don't think I slept, but she was in a coma. So they 2% chance of surviving the night. She's in a coma. This all happened around 9:30 somewhere at night. Mm-hmm. And so I was there, and I went out, before I went home, though, I went down in the waiting room in the lobby, and there were over 100 of our friends down there. It was just packed out. People from work, mom's friends, my friends, people from the church, my boss was there, in that time frame.
Wow.
And so I came back the next morning, and the doctor said, the nurse ran down the hallway and said, she's coming out of the coma. So I booked it up there, and I was the first one in the room, and she was kind of like wobbling around in there, just kind of coming, like she was coming to. She thought she was in the hospital having Jordan, which is our youngest.
Bailey.
But one of us, it was either Baylor or Jordan. She just thought she was there having a baby. But then she looked at me and she said, hey, I saw you. And I said, what do you mean you saw me? You mean just now? No, I saw you. I was looking over your shoulder. You were doing CPR on me. And it was like in and out. And then everybody came in, and it got all crazy.
Were you like, when she said that, were you like, what the heck?
Well, it just stopped me in my tracks. I'm going, wow. And, I was still trying to wonder if you were going to live or not, or that mom wasn't going to live. And so the doctors came in. She didn't recognize Linda, her sister. She didn't recognize some people.
So like her memory, long-term memory.
Yeah, it was just kind of jacked up. And so when she came out of that event, it was weird because she had an ejection fraction rate of 17%.
Which, what is like average for anybody who doesn't know?
It's got to be at least 50% to have any kind of life, and most people are around 50 to 60%. Mm-hmm. Well, this is an aside, but we just had mom's checked last week, and it was 65%.
Which is like as good as
like Michael Jordan's ejection fraction rate. So we went home, and that was the beginning of a long journey of restoration and healing for her and us. And there's way more to the story. I mean, she got home. She didn't know you guys.
Well, she was in the hospital for a month.
Roughly, yeah.
It took, she did therapy.
Three different hospitals.
Yeah, she had to do all kinds of therapy, learn how to walk, talk. Mm-hmm. Again, they said she'd never work. She'd never go to school. She'd never, basically be an invalid her life. Yeah, and she did that therapy with the
neuropsychologist?
Yeah, with the neuropsychologist for 5 years.
Well, it took 5 years. So from the time that she got out of the hospital to now, or to the time where if you met mom, you wouldn't have known she had a cardiac arrest, was about 5 years. And that was, we'd have to talk about all those different nuances. They told us our marriage wouldn't survive. They told us that there's a lot of sexual promiscuity that goes along with a brain injury.
Well, and that's
all
so
that.
So the analysis though, and the medical, what is it? The medical diagnosis is she has
a brain injury, and she'd had a stroke, which we found out later. And they said she'd never work. She'd never finish. She was a senior in college when it happened.
Yeah.
Getting her degree. And
But it was long QT Raman Award syndrome was what they ended
Yeah.
up saying she had, which is an electrical problem.
it was just they were just starting to learn about it,
Yeah.
at least what it did. And so Dr. Mulholland was at, I think it's either St. Dominic's or a University Medical Center. It was the university, I think. And they started working with her, and they were going to put a defibrillator in. And they did that. It was about the size of a Walkman, if anybody knows what those are.
Yeah.
Now it's the size of a 50-cent piece. But so we had that whole journey, and then in the meantime, we moved away from our support system to a new city. We moved from Mississippi to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And Mom was really right in the middle of her therapy when that was going on.
Right. So let's kind of dive then into the aftermath of all that. Like from your perspective as a husband, as a father, as just a human being who has endured that, like you started on this whole journey of, you had some severe PTSD.
Yeah.
Panic attacks for a few years after that.
It started.
Did you have any kind of anxiety or anything like that before?
Well, looking back, it's always, you can see more clearly, but that trauma of watching her die and not even really knowing what was going on, but watching her die, was terrifying. I don't know how else to describe it.
Didn't you have a dream like before it happened, like a week or so before it happened, of you fighting with her in a river or something? Didn't you?
Yeah.
I feel like
I forgot about that, but yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to drag her to the other side.
So this was a couple of weeks before her heart attack. I think that's what's interesting is like every time we revisit this story, I always get more information. And
I forgot about that dream. It was a night. I would dream at night.
You've always had kind of pretty prophetic dreams. You had a dream before you met Mom.
Yeah.
Of her.
Yeah.
And then this and with Mom, I mean, we'll definitely have to get her on here. I mean, she had the whole outer body experience. To me is fascinating because I'm hearing these stories as a kid, and I can't really wrap like my logical brain around that.
I can't either.
Yeah, I mean, there's no logic in it, but that was always just part of the story, and so I think from a young age, I knew that there was a different realm than this, because when Mom was in her coma and had, her heart wasn't there. Yeah. How did she see you? First of all, like drag it, you had brought her outside that. And then she had her own experience of being led
somewhere,
through a tunnel, the whole light, and then beings on both sides taking her. And she said, it's like, I mean, she cries when she tells the story of it just being the most beautiful garden and sitting, I think by a body of water and sitting with these beings and not really
wanting to come back.
Yeah, I mean, you're so blissed out and in paradise that you don't want to come back to this realm. But so it's interesting, like hearing that, and I'm thinking of my own journey with Mom, and then my own journey with my faith and coming back to God, because that was that whole time and that whole event, like growing up, it was just the story. It was a part of our story. I never thought it impacted me though.
Yeah.
It was just like hearsay. And I remember when Mom came back, like.
It was hard for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I just learned this like not that long ago. I didn't realize that. So all of us kids, Cake and I think stayed together, but we got separated. Jordan went with Grandma and Grandpa in Texas for a month because Mom was in the hospital for a month.
Right.
And Haley went somewhere, and then I don't remember that. Like I remember a lot of people coming to the house, and I think if anything, that's also something I took with me always is like the power of community.
Oh yeah.
I just remember being like surrounded all the time by family and friends, and
couldn't have without those people.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember when Mom came back, and it's interesting talking to the other kids. Like we all have our different perspective of this, but I remember Cake and I actually we saw Mom get out of the car, and we started running towards her, and we were so excited, that she was home. We realized it was my aunt, which my Aunt Linda looks exactly, her and mom look exactly alike. And so we were, obviously excited to see Aunt Linda, but super sad that it wasn't mom. And so again, that's a memory I have of running and hugging her, thinking it's my mom, and then realizing it's not. And then the other memory was her coming home, and she still had she was hooked up to things. She was really sore. Her body had just been wrecked. And we had just got new wood floors. I remember that, and we were like excited, kind of showing her around. Like all of us were like showing her around the house, but I have this memory of her just not really being there, like emotionally, or like
disconnected.
Yeah, just present, and so just present with us. And so that's something that I've had to unpack, and I didn't really start unpacking that until college. My junior year of college, when I had a traumatic event happen, I started going to therapy. It uncovered a lot of that, which again, for so long, it was just like, that's just the story. It had no impact on my life. It never affected me. And then I'm like, oh, wait a second. Actually, my core maternal mother, my mother wound is my mother wound, know?
Even if you can't articulate it or don't even know exactly how it happened, there was still this whole body, soul, and spirit effect.
On everybody.
And mom going through it, not feeling connected. Part of what the doctor said afterwards was 85% of people that this happens to, traumatic brain injuries, their marriage does not make it.
Yeah.
Because with mom, the in the hemispheres, and I can't explain this medically, but basically the part of her, she had her brain was affected in the places where that create connectivity, like relationally, things like that, were affected. So she felt disconnected. She saw us, she saw the kids and me, and she went, I have this whole family and a husband, but I don't even know if I love them or not. They're like foreign, they're like strangers to me.
Right. So maybe talk a little bit, like, what was that like then when she's recovering? We had just moved to Pittsburgh. How was she different? Because she wasn't
before that. Because we didn't move until we stayed here for two more years.
So just the aftermath. What was that like for you? Like getting to know this woman who was not the same person you married.
Well, I was terrified for one. I couldn't sleep with her. I remember she came home and I'd be trying to go to sleep, and I'd listen to her breathing patterns, and it'd sound like she stopped breathing. So I ended up sleeping on the floor next to her side of the bed, put my arm up there and just on her arm or whatever. But
how long did you do that for?
I don't even know, probably weeks. But I had to go back to work. And the first time I went back to work, my boss they'd all been up at the hospital, very supportive. The first day I was back, my boss said, hey, we're going to do this ISO 9000 project, and we'd like you to handle it. And when he said that, it triggered, I had the first of many panic attacks, to the point it was like everything went white and got tunnel vision, and I felt like I was talking, slow-mo.
Yeah.
And he's going, Jay, what's the matter? I don't know. He said, let's go outside. So he took me outside, and it freaked him out too. And he sent me to the emergency room, and the doctors were looking at each other like, this guy's a nut job because there's nothing wrong with him. That was the beginning. Mom got therapy. You kids probably should have had therapy at that point. I know I should have, but I didn't. And I started having these debilitating panic attacks. And I didn't even know what it was, but it was like they were so intense that I would have muscle spasms, almost like seizures when they would happen.
Yes.
And I could never tell when they were going to hit. I was afraid I was going to die face down in a ditch somewhere. Irrational, but real terror and real fear.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to just like support the family and like keep it together. I mean, I think that's when a lot of stuff happened with the family dynamic, where you're going through that. We're just like little kids. Haley is the oldest. She sort of had to step into parental role.
And she knew mom before.
Yeah.
Of the kids, she remembered what she was like, and she wasn't like that.
And so, so Haley's had to work through her own stuff with that and resentment and, you know.
The doctor said you can talk about it to me. He was a psychiatrist friend of mine, and he said, you can talk about this or we can drug you. And so we tried the drugs, the anti-anxiety stuff, and it was horrible. Other times in my life, I've tried those things, antidepressants or whatever, but...
When they were okay the other times?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't, like, it's not like, for you, you're saying that.
Yeah, for me. I'm not saying don't do it because it's very helpful at times. For me, it felt like I was being drugged and I was going insane. You know, guys like me don't have panic attacks, and I was having them to the point that you guys would have to take me to the emergency room.
Yeah.
I couldn't go in movie theaters, malls. I mean, I remember one time we were watching a movie, I forget which one, and I just got freaked out and had to get up and walk out.
Yeah.
And that was all happening. And as mom was healing, I was going, this is not the person I married.
Yeah.
She's different. She's like a different person.
So were you, so emotionally, were you pissed? Oh, because you talk about that in the video.
Yeah, that.
You were really angry. Which is part of the grieving process.
Yes, and I didn't even know any of that stuff. Now I know a lot of that I didn't know, but I just remember going, I'm not doing this. It was very self-centered, but it was real, and it was...
So did you contemplate leaving? Time? I think Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, I think her family didn't think that you would stay.
Yeah, they thought I'd leave.
That you would be able to make it through all that.
And I went to Bruce, and Bruce gave me, he's like my father. Interesting. That's a whole other story of just how our roles have changed now. But I said, I'm leaving. He went, why? I said, Lori's different. She's not who I married. And he goes, that's true. She's different. But you're different too. And that was like, it's like a smack in the face. Wow, that is true. I'm not the same. But in that, I was angry. And then I said, it's not fair. I'm sitting there raging out loud to nobody. I'm yelling at the sky. I told it a little differently in that first video, but it was like, it's not fair, God, I hate you, it's not fair. Why us? Why her? Why me? Why all that. And God didn't show up in a burning bush or, appear to me, as some of the hater mail I got said I was crazy and that I'm mentally ill. No, it was in my thinking. I felt like God met me in my thinking, thought process, and I heard this clearly in my mind. I love you, and I love her, and I love her more than you do. And you can be mad. I'm paraphrasing. You can be mad. I love you even when you're mad. I love you as you're mad. But I'm not going to you can't manipulate me with your emotion. I'm God, and you're not God. And again, like I said in that video, that was the beginning of me, God going, I love you, and I love her, and I love your family. Trust me. And you're going to have to choose and learn how to do that. Because right now, you don't trust me or anything. You're not even sure I'm real. Mm-hmm. Yet, if I look back at it, I didn't believe, maybe I don't believe he's real, but I'm doing compressions and praying in her ear. Yeah. So there's almost like this disconnect, this dissonance between what I knew was true and and my fear.
Well, they say that one of the most natural things humans can do is pray. I mean, when you see a sunrise or a sunset or the northern lights that just happened, wow, like that is it's a form of prayer, and people, I've talked and listened to several stories of people who you're going through a traumatic event, and people who never even heard of God, never even were religious or stepped foot in a church, when they're in those moments of sheer terror and fear, like one of the things that they do is they pray, it's just interesting.
Yeah,
because it has nothing to do with religion,
Right.
It's just like,
well, there are no atheists in foxholes, as the saying goes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so what? I want you to kind of paint the picture of like, how was Mom different? Like for you, like when she got because I've heard crazy stories. I want to
Yeah.
respect her and not tell all of them, but some funny ones, which I think is where I get a lot of my craziness.
The parts that were damaged in Mom's brain were the places where the inhibitors, and I don't know what the medical terminology is, but the things that inhibit you from doing inappropriate things, socially or otherwise, were damaged. So, for example, we're at the grocery store one day here in this very conservative town that we live in, and we see a friend of ours, Richard Hatton, and Mom sees him and she pulls down her pants and moons him at high noon in the parking lot. And then she goes, "Did I just do that?" "Yeah, you just did." The whole world saw your ass.
That is where I get it from.
Yes. And another time we were in the post office. These are the ones I remember. The clerk in the post office was just taking their sweet time. You know, I mean, they always get a bad rap about being in the post office. And Mom almost literally jumped over the counter to fight this person because they were just taking so long. When she was going through her therapy with a neuropsychologist, she got very inappropriate with him, not actual sexual, you know, where it got totally sexual because he was a pro and he was able to stop it, but she was basically stalking him, and they told us that would happen, that there's a thing called transference. He was her way out of the fog, you know, and so she latched onto him. I latched on to someone in that time frame too. I was looking for a safe relationship. To me, Mom was not safe. She could die at any moment. I was too scared to go down that path.
Right.
So all that stuff's
Which
going
isn't
on.
even logical because like anybody could die at any moment, but it makes sense. Like,
but it's not logical.
Right. Do you feel like that, going through that, do you feel like that made you more compassionate towards other people, like other people who experience PTSD or, you know, go through trauma?
Yeah, sorry I interrupted you.
No.
I just remember I went through a period, I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted it to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a whole nother story, but when I started counting the cost, and it flashes back to our parents, but we've been married twice as long as both of our sets of parents.
You and Mom.
Yeah, we've been married twice as long as they were.
Yeah.
But I just remember that whole thing you say in traditional weddings of "until death do us part." This was the actuality of living that out in real life. Because what you want to do is run. At least I did. And when I started counting the cost of that, I've told you this before, the ripple effect of me leaving would have affected about 400 people because I actually counted it up.
Yeah. That's
and
crazy.
just doing what I felt like doing.
That probably was a divine, I mean, I don't know many people, especially men, who are going to sit down and write out a list of all the people. Like, do you think that was like a divine?
I was arguing with God.
Yeah.
I was justifying it. Oh, it's
But
not.
like to sit down and actually, I mean, who does that? Who actually sits down? That's what I'm saying. Like there had to be like,
Me.
yeah, but like there had to be some sort of supernatural, like something going on that would give you the awareness and like the wherewithal to sit down and be like, wait, let me make a list of
Count the costs.
400 people.
Count the costs because it's immediate gratification, or it's like, I deserve this. It's not fair what Lori did to me, what God did, whatever your thinking process is. And I went, yeah, I want to make this happen. And I think the other person would have wanted it to happen too. But I went, okay, if I do this, then what is going to be the outcome? Because I was at that point in my life where I knew that you can sleep with anybody, and it'd maybe even be great for a minute, but then you have to live with the fallout of all that.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't count the cost or consider the consequences of our behavior often. I'm talking to all of us right now. We live in a microwave immediate gratification culture, and I want it, and therefore I want it. That must be it's okay, and I can do whatever I want. You said it.
Right.
I'm talking fast, but you said on the last podcast, I think, is freedom isn't getting to do whatever you want. It's actually being able to say no to what you want to do and having that control.
Yeah, I mean that's like right now. I mean, I feel like that's a huge thing right now in the sexually empowered hookup culture is that it's like I'm a woman, I have autonomy, I can do whatever I want, or I'm a person, I have a sex drive, therefore I can do whatever I want. And you're right, like you can.
True.
I mean, I did that, I lived through that, but what I realized too was that I was shackled. It's funny that
How's it working for us?
well, it's this whole sexually like empowered movement, which isn't the first time that we've been in these movements, but it really, I think for me, I learned that doing whatever I want wasn't actually the best for my life.
Everybody knows that money does not buy you happiness. Money can buy you a lot of things, and it will make you not worry about having money.
Right.
It didn't make me a more happy person.
Right.
So, and for me, it was just doing what I wanted with the relationships.
Yeah.
And I'm a relational guy.
Right. You're a connector. So.
Yeah, that 400 people was going, that's too expensive.
Yeah.
For a few months, weeks of happiness.
Right.
And what did I do? What was the fallout for my children, who I'm supposed to be an example to?
To go back and process that for myself was just set me on a new path. I mean, I didn't connect it, and I wouldn't connect it because I was like, oh, I'm fine, everything, that whole event with mom like didn't affect me, but when I started unpacking that, I started having to really sit with the truth of how it did impact me. For instance, like, because there's this I was 4, so that's like, some of your like
formative years,
most formative times in developmental psychology, and my mom wasn't there emotionally, and so I had, that was a core wound, and it didn't dawn on me until, again, years later when I started unpacking all of that why do I always seek unavailable, emotionally unavailable women? I didn't put that together, and to say that there's no correlation between that, I think is, and for a while I would say that until I'm blue in the face, that has nothing to do with who I was seeking or whatever, but it did, and it took a while for me to not even be aware of that, but then to accept that as some truth in my life, and just like as a kid too, like you can't logic any of this stuff, but you're absorbing all of that. Like before I was 5 years old, I experienced the death of my sister, and then the death of my mom, yet she lived but came back a different person. And that's all before I was 5 years old. So like, how does any 5-year-old process that? And you don't logically, but it's in your body, like trauma, that's where I get really fascinated in trauma living in your body, and how you then end up acting on that trauma,
What are some good things that have come out of it? One is 33 years later, our family's probably as close as it's ever been. I think, here's what I know. It's my story. People that have criticized it go, you're whatever, mentally ill, and that bothers me mostly because it's my story, and you're telling me that it's not my story. I know what happened in that time frame, and what I've learned over the years is that, one, God is ever faithful. There's this BS Western Christian gospel that says that when you say yes to Jesus and get saved, everything is unicorns and soft serve ice cream. And Jesus himself talked about travail and trials and tribulation. And what I knew in all of that time since then, and maybe even before, was God is faithful, and he walks with you through the trials and the tribulations. And Jesus coming on earth and living here for 33 years, he modeled that. He modeled he lived in the Roman Empire in an occupied country. There were zealots and revolutionaries all around him. There were all kinds of philosophies and things going on in his context, and he showed us how to walk through. Another word that we don't hear much is like travail, which is what a pregnant woman goes through when she's giving birth, is that travail of childbirth. And God has shown up for me in many, many ways before that, in that, and since then.
Yeah. Well, and I think from the outside, me observing you and Mom walk that journey, I mean, that's opened my eyes to a lot of, reality, to, what does it mean to be married and committed to somebody? And, I don't think everyone's meant to stay together when they get married. I think, that's a whole other thing, but what it means to truly commit and to walk out your faith, because y'all's faith wasn't like it was back then, like y'all have grown tremendously and like softened and, opened up in ways that I didn't think was possible.
Unlearned stuff.
Right. Unlearned a lot of the religiosity of it.
Having to have grace.
Yeah.
For myself but for Mom and for you guys and all that.
Well, and then now here we are, 2024, and we're sitting in church a week ago, and Mom's defibrillator, we think, goes off, and she's tingly on her left side, and here we go again, and it's scary. It was scary for both of us.
For her, because it's an 800 to 1,000 volt shock when it goes off.
Right.
And she had that happen one time since she got the defibrillator, that it went off at least 38 times for a period of 2 hours where she just got shot. There was a frayed wire on the unit.
So it wasn't even that she was having
it just shocked the snot out of her and that was scary for her, and it affected her.
That was, I think I was a freshman when that happened.
Affected Jordan. He was in the car when it happened.
She was driving and it went off, whatever.
Right.
Well, and since then, so this, Mom is just like a powerhouse and such a warrior, because
scars to prove it.
Yeah, and if she wouldn't have been as healthy as she was, she wouldn't have made made it through all that. And the interesting thing I just thought about too is the woman, she probably won't care if we say her name, Debbie, who came and got me in church and was like, you need to come out here to get your mom, like right now. She just has like the voice of like
authority.
You better to listen to this woman. But the crazy thing is that she was the nurse who worked for Mom's doctor back when that happened. So we're 30 years ago. So this woman saw that, and I talked to her about it, and she was like, it surprises you when it's like someone your own age, versus like, usually it's older people who are dealing with this stuff. But
she's about 6 or 7 years older than Mom.
Yeah, and so for me, it's like thinking of, the trauma of that and how that shaped my life. It's also, yes, there were emotional wounds that I had to heal with both you, and that I'm still healing. It's a forever journey.
Same with us.
Right, but like what it has shown me about, like, I mean, thinking of Mom and what she has gone through, like that, it's like she's the strongest woman I know, and I think it's given me this perspective that I've had all along, and I don't think I've ever really been able to articulate it, but just life beyond this. Like, there's just so much more to life than, sex, money, fame, and all of that. Like, I've never really been, I feel like I have this whole event to attribute to my perspective in that, because I've never been one who's been fully engaged in, like, lost in just the culture that we're in. I mean, I definitely have had my own battles for sure, and went down a lot of rabbit holes with, drugs and alcohol and sex and all that stuff. But in the sense of like, at the core, like what truly matters, like.
I mean, that's a good life question.
Yeah.
What matters?
And anybody who has lost anybody who goes through trauma. I think a lot of this made me think of a lot of soldiers. I mean, it makes me think about what's going on right now in Gaza and in the Middle East, and any trauma, like it does something to you, and it's something that we can't escape. Human beings, we can't escape life from happening, but what are we gonna do about it? And it's in those moments that often when we're challenged the most and tested the most, that's when we grow the most. You know, and it's uncomfortable, and we live right now in a society where it's all about comfort.
Hedonism.
Yeah, it's
hedonistic.
If you can tap out any point, you know, and if you're uncomfortable, like, then this isn't for you, you know. But true growth, as Darby and I were talking. Hey, Darbs.
That's what you were talking. But let me say this before you tell me what you're talking about. Is that's one thing I like about you is you're not just buying the culture and the society hook, line, and sinker. I think there has to be an intentionality about having those thoughts. For example, wait, there's got to be more than this. This isn't just about me self-gratifying going into self-gratification. All this money I'm making isn't going to make me happy. Okay, then what is going to bring me happiness or peace of mind, joy? What are those things that and a lot of it to me ultimately is relationship.
Yeah.
With your creator, with your friends and family, with other people that you come in contact with.
Yeah.
Relationships are important.
Well, when we talk about this too, it's a holistic perspective. It's being able to be in the muck and in the stuff, but also being able to shift and get a bird's eye view of what's happening and gain this wider perspective. And it's hard to do that when, you know, you're run by your emotions. I mean, I've been in those. We were a very reactionary family, which a lot of that probably came from the trauma. Where
Mom never knew what was when she was gonna just freak out for no apparent reason.
So everything was a big deal. Everything we popped off at, you know, anything. And I was like that in my relationships. I was emotionally driven, and it wasn't until I started breaking a lot of that down and learning about how I'm wired, you know, where I, you know,
all that I hear intentionality. You can stay just like you are, or you can intentionally grow.
Yeah. Well, and I think too this whole thing last week of Mom being in the hospital. I mean, so update on that, everybody, is Mom's okay. I mean, she's going to the doctor today. Stuff is we still don't know what's going on.
I mean, all the tests they ran this woman is strong and in good shape.
Seriously, freaking Energizer Bunny. She annoys me because she doesn't stop, and she still doesn't stop.
Right.
I'm trying to get her to rest, but that, you know, the last time I was actually home with y'all dealing with Mom's heart stuff, because a lot of times I was away. I couldn't come home. You know, when that happened with her getting shocked 38 times, I was gone. But the last time was in 2011 when she had her open heart surgery. And I remember, like, the doctors, you know, they have to say this and they have to talk about it, as the reality is that she might not come out of the surgery alive.
And for her, that's interesting that you say that, because for her, she was conscious and aware, and that one was a lot harder than the first one.
It was, and I remember I have this distinct memory of being in the kitchen with her in Oklahoma the night before her heart surgery, and this was a open heart surgery that was
mitral valve repair.
It's like 4 hours long.
Yeah,
it was scary, but it was almost like we got this, you know, I got this second opportunity to, like, say bye to Mom. Getting emotional.
It's okay, darling.
And that was like in the height of my debauchery and my just feeling so lost and so, like, clueless to life. But I had this moment with Mom of just getting to hug her and, you know, take care of her. We, you know, Kiki and I stayed home for 8 months that time. And so being here this time and just being able to get there, or being able to be at the hospital and take care of her, like, those are just, like, sacred.
Yeah.
It's just sacred moments. Like, I got to, you know, brush her hair, and
you guys honored her.
Yeah, and it's just, I think that's where, again, it puts like people are precious. Like my parents, I want to have this time with y'all, you know?
Yeah, you said that.
And so that was hard though this last time of like, I was mad at you because it brought up all the stuff, like stuff that I didn't know I had in me, you know.
And
like,
me too. I checked out a little.
Yeah, and I was mad at you for not showing up the first night, but you were doing a lot at the house, but it's like I get in these moments where emotions are heightened and there's trauma, like you're just in it, it's the fight or flight, and I tend to isolate and either I run away physically, but I think even more is I run away emotionally. I go within and so it's like I noticed this with this last time, it's like I made you out to be the bad guy of like, it's your, like, why are you not here with your wife, you know, like being all pissy and then critiquing every action you did. And we talked about it, but you know, like it's revealing more and more and more. And I had someone one of my good friends at church tell me that, I think it was Summer actually. Summer said, this was whenever I was having one of my really bad flare-ups. She just said, like, God, when things come up, like healing comes up, like there's a reason and a time, like when things are exposed, like things are ready to be healed. Like
that's good, yeah.
When you're experiencing something that's really uncomfortable, it can be an indicator that you're ready to heal this part of you. So don't run from it. You know, like don't shove it further down. And that's also been my MO a lot of my life. And I think again, it's a protective mechanism. I shove it all down and I don't talk about it, and I run, and to me that's like it's a safety. I'm safe when I can just be in my own thing, and so it's like I don't want to. With you, it's like I don't want, and with Mom, I don't want to push you away or Mom away. Like those
it's
are
also part of navigating that.
Yeah, and just again being aware. I didn't. This whole event showed me that I still have stuff that I need to heal with you. You know, of that time, like hearing you talk about that time, like I didn't. It was always us talking about what happened with Mom. Like I don't know the depth of what you experienced. And then Haley, like I have a lot of resentment towards my older sister, towards Haley, and that's stuff that I'm healing. And I can't even fathom what it was like for her as the oldest sister.
A lot of it's timing. You can't change or grow if you don't know you need to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it is putting yourself in the vulnerable situation of awareness, and that's painful. And you know, most of the time you and I talk about, well, God showed me. Yeah, well, that sounds really good on paper. How God shows you is with other people. Other people come in your life and confront those things in you, and to me it's the cosmic connection of God using community to heal us and to grow us.
Yeah, I always said, like, if we were meant to do it alone, we'd all be on our own individual 8 billion planets, you know, figuring it all out. Like, there's a reason why we're all in it together. And I think you're just thinking of your bloodline like that. Most of our trauma, we almost all of us have mommy and or daddy issues, and then that's spans millennia, you know, and so what is our family bloodline teaching us? What does it show us? And it's some of the
good and bad.
Yeah, and it's some of the hardest stuff to go through.
I mean, our family were in covered wagons and driving Model A Fords from Texas to Los Angeles in the 20s, in the turn of the century.
And working in brothels and bars
but gutsy people with courage and a pioneer spirit.
Right.
Yeah, it's the bad stuff, but it's also the good stuff that makes us stick it out and figure out what it is we need to do to be better at what we're doing.
Right.
We tend to look at the negative side of it, but my grandfather drove from Crowley, I think it was Crowley, Texas. He drove the family to Los Angeles in 1922 when he was 14.
He drove?
He drove. He was 14 years old in a Model A Ford. I mean, I don't even know if there was an international not an international, but an interstate highway system then,
Yeah, wow.
which is just roads, you know.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But anyway,
I think we could obviously keep going with this, but let's wrap it up here. And as always, just share me what are your takeaways? What are some of the most important things about just this conversation?
for me, unapologetically, God's faithfulness. My story, my experience, God's faithfulness, that when I was ready to give him the finger and walk away.
Well, you kind of did, didn't you?
He was and is faithful, that he leans into me and wants to have a relationship with me.
What do you mean tangibly faithful, though? Like what? Like does that? You have an image of that, of what that looks like
I'm
in
learning
real
it.
life, of him being faithful to you?
He's saying, trust me, I will provide. I will take care of you. Yes, it's hard. Yes, you're going to feel like bailing out. Yes, it's going to be painful. But even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he's with me. Mm-hmm. He comforts me. When I'm laying awake at night, angsting over whatever the problem of the day is or the challenge of the day is, I sense the presence of somebody greater than me in those situations. Mm-hmm. And one is that God has given me some skills of, I'm not a quitter. I've done some hard, courageous things that I didn't want to do, but I did it because it was the right thing to do, not only for myself, but more importantly for Mom and you and other people around us. Mm-hmm. Takeaways is it's really that. God is faithful. Mm-hmm. You can believe it or not. I heard what Anthony Hopkins say in a movie I was watching is some things are true, whether you believe it or not.
Meet Joe Black, right? Is that Meet Joe Black?
No, it might have been.
I think it is.
Yeah, it is.
He's talking to his daughter on the airplane. It's such a good movie.
In The Count of Monte Cristo with who is the guy from The Passion?
Oh, Jim Caviezel.
Caviezel. He's doubting the existence of God, and he's in this prison with this priest, and he goes, "I don't believe in God," and the guy goes, "It's okay. He believes in you."
Yeah.
So that's what I'm taking away from this, and it's an ever-present, ever-present, never-ending journey with learning about who God is and how he helps us navigate this life. And again, he's given us models and examples of how to do it and do it with excellence. Mm-hmm. and doing it well. Mm-hmm. What about you?
A lot. So it's hard to sum up. I think a couple things right off the bat is, again, I watch, and you used to think that I didn't listen to anything you had to say.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I didn't, but most of the time I was, but I was always watching too. And I think I'm just grateful for you and Mom. Like y'all are not perfect, and that's not even, I used to put y'all on this pedestal, but just to be able to see your humanness and y'all's commitment, it set the bar for me, which is scary. And, it can be hard to feel like sometimes I don't know if I could be as courageous or as committed as you and Mom have been. Like when I just think of like y'all as parents or as, in your marriage or whatever, like I'm just grateful that y'all are my parents and that I've learned so much from y'all. Like,
thank you, honey. Of
watching and listening, and just it's been neat to have these conversations again and get more. It's the never-ending process. I think that's the thing, is we're never finished. Like life is the slow work of God, yet it's also the fastest. It's one of our fastest experiences too. So it's just being present and being grateful for everything that comes my way. I think another thing I thought of when we were sharing a lot of this stuff is like, for so many years of my life, I played the victim, and it's really easy to get lost in that and to spiral in victim mentality. Mm-hmm. kind of what you were saying, and it's rightfully so. Like, why you have to, I think we all have to go through that of like, why me? Why does all this stuff happen to us? Why does our family always struggle with money or with this or this? Why is mom, all that stuff? But somewhere along the journey for me, there's a switch that went off, and I think it was my Port Angeles era, where the victim mentality switched, and it's like, okay, all this stuff happens and it sucks, but what am I like? Again, I'm being faced with it, and what's being revealed to me right now in this moment?
Yeah.
I mean, perfect examples in my life right now. This Mississippi time of being back home, unsure of what the heck the future holds. It's like this. I have this curiosity now, and almost like there's I get scared some days, but it's also this excitement of like, all right, God, this is like we're on this adventure together, and I'm not a victim, and I have we are victimized, but I'm not going to live in this. It limited me for so long because I stayed in these lower spaces of like resenting people or just
excuses,
or having unforgiveness. Like unforgiveness is heavy and it weighs you down, and I think when I was in that victim mentality, I lived in a lot of that. And so to be free of that and to welcome all of life, even in the as you say, the shit storms.
Well, and there's a difference between being a real victim, because they are real victims, and having that victim mentality too. I think that the gratitude, and I feel like I always come back to this, but the curiosity. Like I just want to encourage people I know, who I've been having conversations with, is to continue being curious about your journey and why you're thinking what you're thinking, or what, what discomfort you're feeling. Like, be curious about that and seek people who will go there with you. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say this, and Darby's going to probably shake her head, but like, find you a Darby, or, I'd about to say Jay too, is like, we just go there. There's only a few people in my life where we just go there and we let ourselves ramble and say things that, if half the people heard the conversations we had, like...
Yeah, find somebody to listen to you.
Right. Yeah, and welcome life, even in all of it, there is beauty.
It's a big old mess.
It is a hot
And what I'm learning to do is love the mess. Bo, one of our friends, Bo, says, question everything. And then the way I say that is, be curious.
Right.
Just, have a spirit of curiosity about life and about growth and about relationships. And that's what Bo's saying is, don't just do something because that's what we've always done. Why are we doing this? Anyway.
Well, I don't think I've ever regretted the times that and take this with a grain of salt, because I could throw in some reasons, other areas of my life where I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have been that curious. But when on the healing journey or the spiritual path or whatever it is that we're talking about, I've never regretted like opening up those doors and going to those deep crevices of my soul, that are, again, very scary and can be very painful, but I've never regretted going there. And I think this life is more beautiful than all of us can even imagine. And I'm pretty open to, I feel like, life and what she has to offer us. And even then, I know God is continuously blessing and surprising me and showing me even more than I thought was possible.
Were you the one that was talking about looking at the tree? Is that you? Pete Gregg talked about looking at this tree, and somebody we know said they were just looking at this tree and going, that is a really cool tree, and it's just stopping in the moments with all the multi-millions of distractions we have in this culture, and just paying attention to what's going on. And anyway, that's good.
Yeah. All right, Pops.
All right, it's 12:30. Good.
Love you.
Love you too, buddy.
Love everybody. Thanks for listening, as always.
Yep.
please hit us up with questions, comments. If you want us to go deeper into one of these little rabbit holes we had on this conversation, just let us know and we'll go there.
Yeah.
And at some point we will have Mom on here.
And there's a couple other people that we've talked to in the meantime that we'd like to have on as well.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. So thanks for just being with us on the journey as we navigate it together. All of us are in it together. So we're thinking of y'all and we're loving y'all.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.
See you later. Woo.
Yeah.